Hello there folks, welcome back to another video, and this one is going to be in preparation for this weekend's Dragon Ride, Gran Fondo or Dragon Devil, one of the UK's biggest amateur cycling events, taking place in South Wales. On my home roads, ones I know extremely well, and I know lots of people who are doing it as well. So with it being this weekend, I thought, what better way to get people excited and make myself even more nervous by covering some of the roads and like picking apart the route on Google Maps and going into a bit of detail on the two major routes, the Gran Fondo, which is the second to longest, and the longest, which would be the Dragon Devil, which is what I'm doing. I think 220 or around about 200 kilometers, and then the Dragon Devil is 300 kilometers or 296. So yeah, I've done this before for the Swansea 70.3 Ironman course, and I'd like to do it for this. Like I said, I know the roads pretty well. So talk a little bit about, major moments during the ride, what you can expect, and things to just be aware of before you get out there. I'm going to be referring to my card that I got sent in the welcome pack, or in the event pack rather, and if you have this out in front of you as well, you'll be able to see that. So let's begin, and this video is inspired by GeoWizard. If any of you know who GeoWizard is, shout out to you lot. He's the guy who does all like the weird straight line stuff on YouTube, where you walk in a straight line across a country without deviating from that line, and things like that. So he likes to do like maps and breakdowns and things. So this is a little bit of that. So this is the Dragon Devil route. I'm not gonna touch on that yet. I want to touch upon the Gran Fondo, and 213 kilometers, there it is. So this is a quick overview here. Most of you have probably already seen it. 3,500 meters of climbing, start and finish in Margam Park. It's the same for all the routes, and then you head out in this direction. You come through Glenneath, and you follow the same route as the Devil, but then you take a right after the Black Mountain, and you head over towards Cray, like Senny Bridge area, over Devil's Elbow, which is one of the most feared climbs on the route. And then you come back and do like the final like 75k basically that everybody else is doing, with the Regos and the Bulk. Now some of these climbs are some of the most famous climbs in South Wales, and you probably know much about them already. If you're traveling from all over the UK, or well, actually, I've seen an Instagram post from the Dragon Ride Instagram account, and there's riders from like literally all over the world. So if this helps even one local rider who knows the roads already but just is interested to hear my thoughts, then that's awesome. But if this helps someone who's never ever seen the roads before, then that's really my goal here. So the website is really well done, I have to admit. Like, they've got loads of information that can make you very, very prepared for this event. So you'll tackle the following major climbs. Some of these, personally, I don't even recognize them as their names. The Black Mountain, obviously. Glenneath Hill, yes. These first two climbs are the same that you have or the first three climbs are the same that you have in the Dragon Devil, which I'll get to in the second half of this video. They're not, the first two aren't severe at all, and then the Black Mountain is probably your first major climb, and you'll see on the graph here, like for you guys doing the Gran Fondo, you've probably got, I'm not going to say the hardest day, but in terms of like how much climbing you have versus distance, that there's virtually no flat road. The only flat road really comes in the first like couple of hours that you're going to be riding. So you come out the start, you have Sardis Hill, which is really steep at the bottom. So be aware that like it is the first climb of the day, and like if you're feeling like really excited, don't blast it up there. Like in terms of like steepness, it's as steep as Devil's Elbow. Well, in fact, it says there that it's steeper, 19%, but it's definitely a steep climb. We do it plenty of times when we ride back from this area. And then Glenleith Hill is a very gradual, steady climb, 3.2k at just over 5%. There's nothing, there should be no problems for a lot of people, especially as it comes really early in the ride. And then you descend, you have somewhat of a like big road to ride on as you head towards like Ystrad and then towards the first feed and then the Black Mountain. Black Mountain's your first major test, but again, it's like the same gradient as Glenleith Hill, just 2 kilometers longer. And it should be a really nice climb. If it's a nice day, you should really enjoy it. But then this is where, like for you guys, from here on, it's just going to be non-stop climbing. But that's what you signed up for, right? Like, so it's going to be back-to-back climbs. As soon as you descend the Black Mountain, you're straight onto another climb, and it feels like that climb particularly feels like goes on forever, because it's not technically a climb. It's not even been registered here, so like in this area, this is a climb. Like, prepare yourself mentally for a very grippy road here straight off the Black Mountain. Even though this climb is categorized 5.2k at just under 4%, this is actually a climb here as well, but it's not been categorized. But then what you want to be doing probably, if you look at this whole ride from a take a step back standpoint, you want to put your imaginary finish line at 175 kilometers. I know the ride's 213, but when you get to the top of the bulk, it's about an hour, if that, to the finish, and it's nearly all downhill. There's a couple of little ramps in there, but it's nothing like, you know, you could be freewheeling for most of the distance there, and you'll probably end up doing, like, you know, your average speed will still be climbing. Same goes for those doing the Devil, the longest route. Your imaginary finish line is the top of the bulk. And then working back from there, like, you know, the first 2 hours, yes, you've got Glenleith Hill, but you don't want to be burning any matches in these first 2 climbs if you can help it. Like, you're trying to stay below threshold. If any of you have got a power meter, which is obviously like very recommended when it comes to pacing, you're looking at below FTP probably by about 10 to 15% for these first 2 hours. Like, if you're starting to go over FTP or at FTP for longer than 5 or 10 minutes at a time, then obviously that's when you start to, like, you know, burn into like your matchbook or matchbox rather. So one handy tip would be to have like on your bike computer, if you've got the ability to put intensity factor, select intensity factor as a metric that you can see on the screen, along with speed, along with power, along with, you know, everything else. By having that there, that will give you a number. So obviously 1.00 would be 100% of FTP. You'd be riding at FTP. So if you have that as the rolling average for the ride, then you'll be able to see exactly how intense the ride has been up until, you know, this point. So in theory, when you hit the bottom of the Black Mountains, I would say no more than like 80%, maybe 75% of FTP, and this is depending on how long you expect to take to complete this whole ride as well. Like, obviously the longer it's going to be, like if you're looking at like a 7-hour range, you might be able to get away with like a 0.8 or 80% FTP intensity factor over the whole day. But if it's going to be longer than that, then the intensity has to come down slightly. So you have to also be aware that on the climbs, you're probably going to be forced to do more. You know, you might have to ride at 90%, but just be aware that, you know, when you're riding on the flats, you're not always pushing as well, because you're constantly burning energy, you're burning matches. But later on in the ride as well, it's going to have this effect where, because you're going up and down all the time for like the last, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, or however long it's going to be taking you, that's going to skew it as well, because you're either going to be riding hard, just to get up the climb, or you're just not going to be riding any power at all because you're going down tight lanes and descent with very little flat road. So speaking of which, there's one thing I want to just draw your attention to for those doing the the Gran Fondo. So because you're doing the first section with the people doing the devil, so this is where you come off the Black Mountain here. This is the Black Mountain, the squiggly section. And then you take the sharp right, and you're going to head across this way, across through this kind of forestry area, past Usk Reservoir. It's really nice, actually. Very, very nice area. And then you're going to head where this climb starts. The categorized climb, they're saying, is here to the bottom of Cray, and then you're going to take a left, and then you're going to head up another climb straight away up to the top of Cray, where I think there's a feed station. That's probably your best bet to like definitely have a good stop at that one, because at this feed station here, you're going to head down towards Hill Senny or Senny Bridge, and then you're going to hit Devil's Elbow around about 20 kilometers after that feed station. So if it's going to take you an hour to get from the feed to Devil's Elbow, then that gives you an hour to digest whatever you've eaten at the feed. And then, from Devil's Elbow, you are looking at although the descent, so that here's the elbow right here. You can see it in all its glory. San Helen. There is a time segment as well, right here on Devil's Elbow, but you can't actually see the road. Yes, there is there. So there's the road coming that way, around the bottom and up here, and it comes from down in this valley down here. So you come up to the top, stay wide on the hairpin if you can, smile for the camera, and then when you get to the top, it's gonna be a lane like this for quite a while. I can't remember if it's open to farm animals, but I would be aware if I were you. But this is the type of road it is. It's like a flowing lane all the way down. There's a fair straight bit of road here. It can be quite fast. It depends on which way the wind is blowing. But you're effectively going downhill all the way to Glenneath again, which you'll obviously recognise from earlier in the ride. Where's my map? How do I get back to... Oh, there it is. And then there's a couple of sharp bends on this road, so just be aware. Don't do any hero moves, because you want to also prepare yourself. Like, if you're going to eat something, I would eat it on this road just after climbing Devil's Elbow, because you're going to turn here in Glenneath, and from Glenneath to here, because this is technically where the climb to the Regos starts, at this little roundabout here, and you come up past Zip World, around, and the summit is here. But you're going to be coming down here, and there's another climb from Glenneath to Kevin Regos, which is like, it's about 10 minutes. It's a fair way. It's probably the equivalent of what you did here from Glenneath to up here, which would have been the second climb of the day. So it almost mimics that perfectly. And then you have a little bit of flat, and then you go up the Regos properly. So what happens is it extends the climb massively with a little bit of rest in between. But it's a long way. Like, the Regos is a long climb if you're doing it from Glenneath. So just be aware of that. Down into Treoki, Treherbert, and then straight up the Bulk. And like I said, once you get to the top of the Bulk, you're down here past Point Raider End, which is where you started the ride, and then back around. So you're coming from, high altitude, like 500 meters above sea level, all the way down to Botalbot, which is obviously sea level. So it's a lot of descending to do in that last, 25-30 kilometers. So yeah, in terms of pacing, we've touched upon that. In terms of nutrition, yeah, I mean, it's a bit late to be practicing anything now. I mean, hopefully your nutrition is already practiced, but if you're watching this in the future and you've given yourself lots of time to prepare for it, then certainly look at, consuming as much as you can probably in the first couple of hours, where the intensity might be a little bit lower than the last couple of hours, just because of the way the terrain is and everything else. And we're talking like when I say as much as you can consume, you know, it's definitely over 90 grams an hour of carbs potentially. For a lot of people who are riding, you know, really hard, upwards of 80% of FTP, yeah, like over 100 grams, 120 grams. It'll be easier to do than I think a lot of people think, but it is worth practicing. Okay, let's move on to. That's perfect. That's 15 minutes. So let's move on to touching on the Dragon Devil. By the way, if there's anything I missed out on either of these, just leave a question down below in the comments. Even if you're watching this 5 years from now, hopefully I'll still be able to see it. Okay, so the Dragon Devil is just shy of 300k, which is a shame because we're gonna have to do laps of the nearest roundabout to round it up to that last 4 kilometers. 4,600 meters of climbing. Most of that comes in the back half, which is where, you know, everybody's doing the Gran Fondo, which makes this quite a challenging ride. If the climbs were spread out, you know, it's a little bit easier to get your head around. But because it's right at the end, or because most of the climbing is kind of centered in that back half, it's going to be a challenge for a lot of people, including myself, because it all comes down to intensity. You know, I intend to try and get around in like, you know, 9.5 hours or something. Of course, my intensity has to be really high as well. So it's just as high as everybody else's intensity. As I always say, just moving a little bit faster. That's the only difference. So, difficulty rating, 11 out of 10. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of climbs on this list, but there's more climbs than I think they actually say there are. But it's a great ride. To do all of these climbs in one ride is a once in a lifetime thing, I think. You know, I've never done these climbs all in one go. I've done them, you know, on different days, and you know, sometimes, you know, to do them all in one go is like, it is a full day of bike riding. So I don't think there's anything in the event guide I wanted to touch upon. Obviously the start is in Margam Park, which I'm not familiar with. I've actually never been to Margam Park before. I know, I can hear the gasps from the locals now. What are we saying? Oh, the Gran Fondo route. So I would just cut off. Ooh, quick note actually. This weekend, this might not happen in the future, but this weekend, it's also the Gritfest gravel event happening just north of Llandovery, just up here, funny enough, in the same area that we're going to be riding through in the top half of the Devil. So just be aware that there might be other cyclists on the route, they might be on gravel bikes, there might be other signposts on the route as well. I don't think I've actually seen that being pushed anywhere online where they're telling you to watch out in case you follow the wrong sign. I mean, you know, if you go the wrong way, you'll just end up on gravel in the next, you know, kilometer. So, like, so I don't think there's going to be any issues, but just worth pointing out. So, any information here on? So we got the Media Fondo. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just as well. I won't touch on those because they're virtually the same routes. It's just the Devil, really. So this route, in terms of pacing, I'll just tell you what I'm going to be doing or trying to do, and then you can kind of maybe translate that into what you're trying to do. So in terms of pacing, I'm looking at riding at least until this point here, which is about 80 kilometers, or maybe 70 to 80 kilometers, with a cohesive group. So finding some friends, finding some training buddies, whoever, similar ability. If you can form an alliance, like Star Wars, where you're going to say to each other, look, we're not going to ride crazy up the hills, these first 2 climbs, we're just going to ride together, and we're not going to, you know, we're actually going to push more on the flats and the downhills rather than on the climbs. We want to keep it together. The danger is if you're riding, because obviously this is a big day now for a lot of people. If you're riding with people who you're not communicating with or you don't know, like, talk to people, see what their time, what they're expecting to do, and try and group together with those people so that you can tackle the first 2 or 3 hours at least at a pace that you feel comfortable with. it not only will it might make you faster, but it most certainly will save you energy if you're riding steadier, as opposed to like ride with people who you think you can keep up with, and then you end up smashing yourself on these first 2 climbs with 2 10-minute efforts at like 105% of FTP. Like, you're burning way too many matches. So in theory, you want to be keeping it steady on these climbs, and then your first real test, again, just like the other route, is the Black Mountain. You want to get over that, and then you've got a real chill sort of big section, I would say 20 odd kilometers until you get to Llandovery. This is a rolling road here, but it's it's still a 30 kilometers an hour plus road if the wind is good and if you're in a nice group. If you're solo, might not be so much. But from Llandovery, you then hit a feed station, and then you have this effectively like a 60 kilometer, roughly 40-mile loop out to Llanrwtyd Wells, one of the oldest towns in the UK, if not the oldest, I think. And then you come round past Llymbrian Reservoir, which is amazing. There's some great gravel routes up there. Killicum, and then down to Llandovery. Loving these Welsh names, by the way. And so mentally, it's a nice loop where you can just tick a box. You're like, right, I got to Llandovery. That's phase 1. Phase 2, we're going to tick off this 40-mile loop around Llanrwtyd and Llymbrian. It's a really, really nice ride, even on its own. So if the weather's nice, I would like to think that a lot of people mentally would have a refresh going around here, because the views are really nice. The road is incredible. Look at this road. It just goes in and out, in and out. See if I can get it up on Google Maps here, just to give you a little bit of familiarity. I can't speak. Apologies. So yeah, here's the it's a really, really nice area, and it's up and down, left to right. Oh look, there's some cyclists there actually. Yeah, up and down, left to right. I mean, look at that. It's just incredible. So it can be a little bit sapping. It's not like an easy road, but in terms of like having something to look at and nice scenery, it's very nice. So something to look forward to there. If you've never seen this area, it's something to look forward to and to break it up. So from there back to Llandovery. Sorry if I'm a little bit quick through this. But again, you want to be utilizing those feed stops. And I have missed out, obviously, one very important thing, and that is Devil's Staircase, which is over here. Yeah, another one with hairpins on. This is a fantastic road from Abergwesin to the Devils. So there's obviously 2 Devils climbs on this route. This is another fantastic one. The area is just like, it's an incredible area. So there it is there. It looks worse than what it is. I'm the wrong person to ask about climbs like these, because like I always think they're not as bad as they're made out to be. I think their names precede them. I'll just leave it there. I think it makes them sound worse than what they are, but yeah. Super nice descent off the other side of that climb, the Devil's Staircase. It's quite fast, so be aware. Good time to fill up a water though, a bit extra weight on your bike for one thing, which you can use on this section. Round Llymbrian, it's all up and down here that you can see on the terrain, and then it's downhill to Llandovery, which is here, which is where that feed is. That feed there is going to be another checkbox, mental checkbox for that last 130k, because now you're joining on to the route that the Gran Fondo's doing, and it's going to be hilly AF basically from here on in. You're going to have to be very mindful about like how you're feeling. If you look really at the profile, like I've said before, up into the Black Mountains, there's a lot of flat roads. So if you can find a group, if you can ride within yourself, then that's brilliant. Once you get over the Blacks, obviously it's much of a muchness. You've got to push over that climb because it's a long climb. And in theory, you want to think of it like this. Like the longer the climb, the more time you can lose or the more time you can gain. the longer the climb, the intensity has to be brought down slightly. So if the Black Mountain is going to take you 20-25 minutes, then you can't be riding that at like 100% of FTP. You've got to be looking at like 90% or maybe even slightly less, because it comes so early. It is about playing that long game. You're only 3 hours in here, where you could be out for 12 hours. So you could be out for another 10 hours, 9 hours from here. So it's a long way to be pushing on. However, the road, if it means you're going to get in a group at the top, and you're going to be in a group all the way to Llanddyfri and then potentially to Sugarloaf, which isn't like it's not a difficult climb. It's categorized there. The bottom is the steeper section, but then it's a pretty gradual climb from there up. It's pretty easy. The group should stay together fine. But this road from Llanddyfri, or from the Blacks, all the way to Llanrwtyd Wells, which is just after the Sugarloaf, it's not a fast road, but it's certainly a road where you could benefit from being in a group. So if you can push over the Black Mountain to be in a group, and I'm talking about the people obviously now who are going the long distance on this one, it's if you can stay in the wheels longer. So if you're going to burn matches to get over the mountain to be in a group, I would do that. Like imagine if you're in a race, imagine it's a race and you're thinking, how do I save it? What's the best way to save energy? I can burn energy here to then be in a group to save energy later. So that's the way I would look at that. If it's going to break up on Devil's Staircase, which quite frankly I think it will, so be it. But you might well, find groups then, or people, 1 or 2 people. I'm talking groups, I'm talking like 3 or 4 maybe. It won't be like 10 or 20 riders. It's a long way for groups like that to stay together. But then the last bit, it's much of a muchness. Man, oh man, it's like 5.2k at 4%, 4.1k at 3.9%. You got Devil's Elbow again, of course, that we've touched on earlier, and then you got the Regos and the Bulk, which we've already spoken about. But again, your finish line should be at that, 260-ish mark over here. So the thing is, with once you get back into Llanddyfri after doing the Devil's Staircase and coming back down, it's down through Killicum, a couple of little climbs there, but nothing too serious. Into Llanddyfri, fuel up. There's a couple of shops there as well if you need more than what's at the feed stations. I would stop there, and if you think you need to stock up there, because there's not going to be much over that next kind of 40, 50, 60k. You're going to head to Trecastle on the main road, the A40. It's quite a busy, well, might not be busy when we're doing it, but it's going to be a big road. It's an A road that takes you to Brecon. They have a lot of time trials on it, so it's quite a fastish road, but the way we're doing it, it's like a gradual climb. You can see we're going from like 75 meters to 200 meters over the course of a good few k, so it's gradually uphill. Before you turn into the lanes and you go up a major climb, you drop down into Cray. There's another feed when you get to the top of Cray here, Cray Reservoir. Then you go down, and then you take another turn in to go across some more lanes, and then you head to Devil's Elbow, and then there's that descent I was talking about, that I showed you, the top of Devil's Elbow, and down, and then the long climb. Well, you can actually see it there, look. So you can see from 71 meters all the way up to almost 500 meters above sea level in the space of 10k. So yeah, that's a pretty long way. And then from the top, that's like a song. From the top, 264 all the way down to the 300. So it's 35, 40k of technically downhill, isn't it? Really. So again, something to look forward to. It's not over till it's over. But with a route of this length, the danger is, of course, that, and I've spoken to people who have already brought this up and are slightly worried about it, is how do you prepare for these last few climbs? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's call them 6 climbs. We're going to count that Regos one as, full one. The best way to prepare is to eat. To give you a little bit of a sneak preview into what I'm going to be doing, but we'll go into more detail in the videos post Dragon Ride, and we'll go into a lot more detail on that. There's going to be a balance of like whole foods and then, sports nutrition. So I'm not going to be relying on sports nutrition, specifically Sturka fuel, the whole time. It's going to be a balance. So we're going to be looking at the first couple of hours is going to be like a little bit of whole food, bars, drinks, a little bit of carbohydrate mix in there. But I'm looking at 120 grams of carbs an hour. Now, why that number? Because I have had some questions about that. It's not the magic number, but it's a number that you can aim for because it's more than what most people eat. Most people might eat like 50 or 60. And you'd be amazed sometimes. Again, with practice, you got to be careful. If you double that, like, you almost feel like when you're riding, your job is actually to eat. When you're out there on a ride like this, your job is not to ride your bike. Your job is to eat the food. You almost feel like every minute of the ride, you're thinking, when can I eat next? What am I going to eat next? When am I going to eat it? So it's almost like you're always thinking about food when you're riding. And that's a completely different way of thinking than I think a lot of us are used to. And that's okay. But again, it takes practice. So I'm thinking I'm actually going to have support on this ride. So it's not just going to be using the aid stations, the feed stations that the event have provided for us, of which there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The question is, if it's hot, will they provide more? I don't know. But there are shops and things along the way. Now, I'm going to have people stood at the Black Mountain, even though there's a feed at the bottom of the Blacks. I don't want to stop at that one. I'd rather stop at the top. So I'm going to have someone up there with some liquid for me, refill bottles. And then at Llandovery, which is here, which is about 100 kilometers in, I'm going to be having my first sort of solid meal of the day, which is going to be like a sandwich or something like that. You can get that from a shop. If you're not being supported, you can get that from a shop, and that can be something that will break up your nutrition strategy, as opposed to just eating bars and gels. The thing with that is, though, when you're looking for like a sandwich, you don't want it to be like a super high fat content. You want like a good hit of carbs, 80 grams or something in a sandwich, and then like something that's a little bit like satisfying, like peanut butter and banana, or peanut butter and jam, or ham sandwich, or something along those lines. And then I'm gonna be very much like relying on bars and liquid and gels, probably from like the halfway point on, with another stop at Llandovery again. And Llandovery is probably your best bet in general for having like not a proper stop, but if you're gonna make the most of like a shop or something, then this is your best bet. Like, there's a Nisa local there, and there is a co-op down here which is on your way out of on the way out in the A40, so you're heading out towards that final section of the route, heading out towards Trecastle and Senny Bridge. So you got two options there. You can stop. Ideally, if you're with somebody as well, a great tip would be you could one of you could run into the shop and grab things for both of you while the other person looks after the bikes. That would almost that would be a perfect scenario. Breakfast is going to be quite carbohydrate heavy, about 2.5 grams per kilogram of body weight, maybe even 3 grams per kilogram of body weight. And then day before, I'm just going to be eating a little bit more carbohydrate than I'm used to, probably between 600 and 1,000 grams of carbohydrates the day before. As long as you practice this and you're capable of withstanding it, then it works, or whatever works for you, really. But you're gonna need to be topped up. You're gonna need to start the ride in a good place, and even when you're on the start line, eating something there. If you're out for a big day like this, like I said, your job is to eat. Your job is not to ride your bike, almost. So effectively, that's it. I mean, in terms of pacing, because you're going to be out there for a long time, and obviously, like I said earlier, the longer the time you're out there, the lower the intensity you're going to be able to ride at effectively, to be able to sustain it throughout the whole day. You can ride hard at the beginning, but there's always that unknown and that uncertainty that you might fall away at the end. And my worry is for a lot of people that if they ride too hard over this first 100 kilometers, if you look at the last 100 kilometers, you know, so what we're looking at, like 200k is here. So let's call it there, the bottom of that climb. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 climbs, and 2 of those are the biggest climbs of the day. Like the Black Mountain's a big climb, but the Volcan and the Rigos are the biggest climbs of the day. If you're producing less power there, of course, you're going to be going slower. And that's my biggest concern for a lot of people is, you know, if you're not looking after yourself over the first couple of hours, then my worry is you'll pay for it over those last couple of hours. And you just know that if you're going to start struggling here, there's no hiding place because there's no flat road. It's either up or down. And yeah, it's going to be a bit of a painful slog to get around those last, 100 kilometers. But like I said, there's a couple of things, a couple of cheat codes you can use to get you through it, like mentally and physically. You've got that big loop there, which is a mental relief, I would say. The Llymbrian Reservoir is really nice for your head. You've got the first 70k, which if you can do in a group, 60 or 70k, that can save you a lot of energy. Also, this section here after the Black Mountain, so if you're climbing the Black Mountain and then doing that bit afterwards, that can save you a lot of energy. And that's what it's all about, really. It's about consuming energy and it's about saving energy. Because everyone wants to be in their best possible shape for the end. No one kind of wants to be suffering through those last couple of hours, and you want to be able to either match the intensity you're doing over those first couple of hours, or you want to be able to slightly increase it. And I'm talking about, being able to ride on the climbs at, maybe 90% of FTP, whereas in the first couple of hours you were holding back at like 80%. So yeah, that's going to be it. If you got any questions, I hope this helped. I will keep an eye out in the comment section. But yeah, I'm really excited for this weekend. Hopefully the weather cools down ever so slightly. It's like 26 degrees currently. If it goes down to like 20, we get a little bit of rain. That'll be really nice. I don't think that'll be I don't think that'll be a bad thing. But yeah, all prepared, and there'll be some videos obviously after it as well, showing you like footage from the event, vlog. We'll talk about the nutrition strategy in more detail. We'll talk about the pacing strategy. We'll evaluate. We'll do the whole thing afterwards as well to see if everything lined up. So if you're doing it, best of luck. If you're interested in doing it in next year maybe or something, then let us know in the comment section down below. That's going to be it for this one. I will see you very soon.